Hi there, scholars, and welcome back to week 4 of your quarantined edition of AP Lang. I've got a lot to talk about this week, all based on the big news that came out of Thursday night, what's going on with the new AP exam. I want to talk about that condensed exam format and what we know so far. I want to talk about how we're going to respond to that with the new sort of weekly format for the lessons. I want to talk about the grades that we're going to be taking here in quarter 4. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering about how that's going to go. And then lastly, we'll just look at this week at a glance. So let's start by looking at that new exam format, the new condensed exam for the 2020 exam. Those details were released on Thursday night in a webinar exclusive for AP teachers, where Trevor Packard, the vice president in charge of advanced placement for College Board, revealed all the pertinent details for the various AP subject tests. For AP Lang, we learned that the test is going to be a single Q2 rhetorical analysis question. You're going to be given 45 minutes to respond. That's a designated 40 minutes for response and a 5-minute bit of extra time for you to make sure that you submit everything properly. We know again that the exam is going to be online, as I mentioned last week. We also know when the exams are going to be held. A new 2-week schedule was released. The AP Lang exam is one of the last ones. It will be on Wednesday, May 20th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon here in the Central Time Zone. There is a makeup opportunity on June 4th, but you are expected to go ahead and take the exam on May 20th. It's not one of those things where you get to really choose. The makeup is a true makeup opportunity and is reserved only for students who have a legitimate reason for why they couldn't take the exam on May 20th. So the makeup does require that you get permission from the school. So you'll have to contact your counselor, contact your AP, and explain why you weren't able to do the exam on May 20th. Really try to make sure that you're available for that May 20 exam. Just as Mr. Packard explained in the webinar, if you miss May 20, well, you've got that backup date of June 4th. If you miss June 4th, that's it. There is no additional date after that. So make sure you're planning on doing the exam on May 20th so that in case anything goes wrong, then you have the backup date of June 4th. What else do we know? We know that the rubric is going to be identical to the scoring guidelines that we've been using all year that were published last summer. What we don't know is how the score setting is going to work. The score setting, if you're not familiar with what that means, is the process of what College Board considers to be a passing score of 3, a passing score of 4, and so on. You basically have a raw score that's calculated out of your traditional exam, where they take how many multiple choice you got right, what each of your 3 essay scores are, put that through a formula that generates a raw score somewhere between 0 and 120, something like that. And then they sit down after the test is over and decide, hey, which raw score is going to count as a 1, which count as a 2, which is going to count as a 3, a 4, and a 5. With just the one essay, we really don't know how they're going to do score setting. They're going to have to sit down after the fact and figure that out. My best guess is that a 4 is going to be your passing grade. So earning a 4 on the essay rubric should be enough to get you a 3 to pass the exam. I imagine that means that a 5 on the rubric will get you a 4 for the exam, and a 6 on the rubric, being the highest you could get, obviously is going to get you a 5 on the exam. Once again, we won't fully know until the score setting committee meets after the exams have all been scored, and you can bet that you won't receive those scores until the middle of July like usual. So that's about all we know. There's more details, of course, will be coming in the next few weeks. They are going to be offering some sort of practice, not really for a grade or anything like that, but just so that you can see what the system setup's going to be. It'll probably be in that AP classroom system. And so they want to get some sort of practice out there so you can test your system to make sure that everything works, that the timer works, that you're able to submit something. So just make sure you guys are staying tuned for updates like always. So, in response to this new exam, we're going to change up how we've been working week to week here, or at least for the last couple of weeks with our e-learning. This week is going to start a new pattern, and we're going to start this week with a timed essay. Now that we know exactly what kind of exam you're going to have and what the timer is on it, we need to start preparing under a timer. That timer will decrease each week, but you're always going to start the week with a timed essay. When you take these timed essays, they're going to be available in Canvas in a Canvas quiz, no lockdown browser or anything like that, just a standard Canvas quiz. But when you do these, you need to push yourself to finish. You will have a chance to go back and revise your essay throughout the week after you do the timed version of it, and that it'll be that revised version that I will end up scoring at the end of the week. But you need to be preparing yourself for that AP timer, and so take the timed essay as a practice, but as a proper practice for the real thing. Make sure that when you sit down to take the timed essay at the beginning of the week, that you have allotted a segment of uninterrupted time. It says in the quiz instructions how long the timer is going to be. Make sure you allot that much time. Tell your parents, brothers, sisters, whatever, hey, I've got to take this 55-minute timed essay. I cannot be disturbed. Please make sure I'm undisturbed. Make sure as well that you type up your response in a separate document. It's never suggested that you type up a response directly in the text box because I'm sure you guys have experienced this before. You have an internet outage or your computer throws a fit and all your work is just gone. So make sure you type it up in a document that has autosave, and that way when you finish, you can copy and paste into the text box. Speaking of that, always give yourselves the last 5 minutes of your timer to very calmly and carefully copy and paste everything into the text box. Make sure everything looks okay and hit submit. That's what the timers will always have a built-in 5 minutes at the end. And that's what I'm expecting you guys to do, is to finish up with 5 minutes to spare. And so you have a nice easy time sorting out any technical difficulties that you might experience. Beyond the timed essays each week, you're going to have additional Nearpod lessons. You guys have been doing really well completing those. Keep making sure that you enter your full name where it says name. Please put your ID number in the other field. That's very helpful for me to check who's done the Nearpod lessons. Once you do your Nearpod lessons for the week, you'll have a day of reflection and peer grade. You'll reflect on the previous Q2 that you've written and do a peer grade evaluation of that previous Q2. And then finally, the last thing for the week is to revise the timed essay that you started the week with, based on what you learned in the lessons, based on some of the reflections that you did, some of the things you saw in your peers' essays. Do some reflecting and do some revising based on that. The very last thing will actually be to, once you get your essay finalized, you'll submit it in Canvas, and then you'll also submit it to next week's peer grade activity, which is always going to run in a 2-week cycle. Lastly, Fridays are now going to be independent study days. Again, this is a week-long assignment. You can do this whenever, but according to my pacing calendar, I'm now leaving Fridays open for you to study what you think you need to study. And just if you're looking for recommendations, AP has been asking me to push its AP Live channel on YouTube. Every day, they're putting out new videos for each subject area, just on various things that can help you in the course and on the exam. I've looked at a couple of them. They're solid. There's nothing wrong with them. I think some of them are a little bit basic for you guys, but it's always good to hear another voice for this thing. So I certainly encourage you to take a look at that. All right, next up, let's look at grades for this final quarter. You can probably imagine what kind of graded assessments I'm going to give you this quarter. Yeah, it's a whole bunch of Q2 essays. By the end of the marking period, you guys will have written 6 Q2 essays for a grade. I will go ahead and score the Q1 and the Q3 that you started the marking period with. It may take me a couple of weeks because honestly, those are back burner. We need to be focused on the Q2. You need your reflections on the Q2. And when I do score those will be half weighted. Just a heads up, the last graded assessment that I will take will be March 10th. And that's because March 11th starts your AP exams. And I will not assign any graded assessment work during the 2 AP weeks. And then once the 2 AP weeks are over, we only have 4 days of school left. So whether we're still at home or whether we're in school at that time, May 10th will be our last graded assessment deadline. Just if you're curious on how I'm going to be scoring these Q2 essays, here's the rubric here. It's the exact same as College Board's Q2 rubric, except I've put actual point values on there from 0 to 100. You'll also notice the row at the bottom there is for MLA formatting. I've said in a previous video that I wouldn't even read your essay unless it was MLA formatted, but it is taking me so long because there's so many of you who just ignored that. It's taking me forever to coordinate with you guys to get the MLA fixed, so I'm just going to dock you points. So make sure that you have full MLA formatting or else you could lose up to 10 points on that essay. Hey, it's an easy thing to do, MLA. You just have to, be careful, that's all. As for this week, scholars, you will start off, as I mentioned before, with a timed essay. This will be rhetorical analysis essay number 4, and it will be a 55-minute timer. You won't get to look at the prompt or passage until you start the quiz. So make sure that you are ready to work and work quickly. Make sure you have that block of uninterrupted time, as I mentioned. After the timed essay, I've got 2 new Nearpod lessons for you this week. The first one on writing topic statements, the second one on using text evidence. After that, you'll take a look at your Q2 rhetorical analysis essay number 3. I'll return those to you Wednesday morning, and you'll have the opportunity to do some reflections on that. And that's also when you'll do the peer evaluation on that Q2 number 3 that I asked you to turn in last week. And then lastly, it is just getting into the revisions. You'll have an opportunity to revise and edit your original timed essay as much as you want to before you finally submit it for a grade. And you'll need to turn that into Canvas and then turn it into the peer grade assignment as well. One quick note about the peer grade assignment. I'm going to be transitioning this week from the peer grade classes that I've had set up all year long to a big combined AP class, AP Lang class. And so this the peer evaluation assignment that you do this week will be in your current classes. But when you submit your Q2 number 4 at the end of this week for peer evaluation, that will actually be an assignment in a new combined class where all 6 of my preps will be together. And that's just because here when we're doing e-learning, your individual sections don't really matter. As for the optional workload this week, continuing with your language and composition and mechanics and usage study, continuing to work on IXL, doing some more targeted skill work. And then for our literature study, we are finishing up The Great Gatsby, chapters 7 through 9, and had some really good conversations about that so far on the message boards. Look forward to continue to do that. And those of you who haven't joined us before previously for any of the optional work doesn't ever close. You can do that, start it rather, at any point. So if you missed out starting Gatsby with us, go back and find that assignment. Read the first 3 chapters, join in our discussion board, and that's all you have to do to get started. All right, and finally for this week's virus movie, if you've been curious about the movie stills throughout this presentation, this week's movie is Ingmar Bergman's classic The Seventh Seal from 1958. This is a very well-known, very popular, I guess you could call it an art house film about a Swedish knight who returns home from the Crusades, only to find that his homeland is being decimated by the bubonic plague. He encounters death and challenges death to a chess match over his life. And he realizes very early on in the match that he has no hope of outwitting death. So he instead just tries to prolong the game for as long as possible, long enough for him to do a sort of redeeming act that will make up for all the shame he sort of feels after participating in the Crusades, that sort of thing. It's a great movie, great metaphors, wonderful cinematography, well acted. It is in Swedish, but subtitles, reading those never hurt anyone. And that's all I have for you guys this week. Long video, but lots to cover. As you're working this week, scholars, thank you again for all of your hard work. Thank you for reaching out to me and trying to troubleshoot problems. Keep it up. As always, work hard, be nice, stay at home. Let's try to get the worst of this virus over with. And scholars, as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I'll see you when I see you.